Force is a push or a pull. It is described by its strength and direction. In the example, there is a force that is getting exerted on a car that is moving forward and backwards. Force is usually measured in newtons. When two or more forces are acting on one object, it is called a net force. In this example, two people are exerting force on one desk, so it is an example of a net force. If two forces acting on one object is not the same, it is called unbalanced force. Unbalanced force causes a change in object's motion. It can mean unbalanced force in the same direction or unbalanced force in opposite directions when one force overpowers another force acting on the same object. However, balanced force does not cause change in object's motion. The object just stays still when a balanced force is acting on an object.
Friction happens when two objects rub against each other. In this case, there is a friction between the chair and the ground. Friction depends on how hard the surfaces push together and the types of surfaces involved. On a rough surface, there is more friction that causes the ball to move less than the ball moving on a smooth surface. There are four kinds of frictions. First is static friction, which acts on the object that is not moving. When a person is pushing on the desk that is not moving, there is a static friction. Second is a sliding friction, which is a friction between sliding objects just like the friction happening inside the trombone slide. Third is the rolling friction, which is a friction that happens when an object rolls along the ground like the skateboard. Fourth is a fluid friction that happens when a solid object moves through a fluid, just like a hand moving through water. Gravity is a force that pulls objects toward each other. When you drop the ball drops because the earth is pulling on the ball. Mass is one factor that decides an object's gravitational attraction. The bigger ball has more mass than the smaller ball, which causes the bigger ball to have more gravitational attraction. Distance also affects gravitational attraction. In those pairs of balls, the pair of the balls that are closer to each other would have more gravitational attraction. Weight and mass is often confused. Weight is measured when you step on a bathroom scale. It is the measurement of gravity affecting on you, measured in newtons. Mass is measure of amount of matter in an object, which is measured in kilogram. 1 kilogram is about 400 modern pennies heavy. When there is no force other than gravity acting on an object, the object is said to be in free fall. In this case, the book is in free fall. Air resistance is a type of fluid friction. It is an upper force acting on the falling objects. There is more air resistance to the objects that have more surface areas, like in this case, crumpled paper ball has less air resistance acting on it than normal paper. Terminal velocity is when an object reaches its maximum falling speed, the acceleration of gravity equals air resistance. When a person skydives, the person reaches a point of speed where the speed doesn't increase anymore, and kept constant. Projectile motion is a strong ball not going down straight, but it falls down while moving forward.
Newton's first law of motion states that an object at rest will remain at rest, and an object moving at a constant velocity will continue moving at a constant velocity, unless it is acted upon by an unbalanced force. Inertia is the tendency of an object to resist a change in motion. Inertia depends on mass. Between these two balls, one ball with more mass than another, the ball with larger mass moves farther when two balls are rolled with the same force, since it has more inertia. Newton's second law of motion states that acceleration depends on the object's mass and on the net force acting on the object. Acceleration is net force divided by mass. To increase the acceleration of an object, you will need to increase the net force or decrease the mass.
Newton's third law of motion states that if one object exerts a force on another object, then the second object exerts a force of equal strength in the opposite direction on the first object. It means that for every force done on an object, there is an action and reaction pairs. In this case, a person is pushing on the wall, and the wall is pushing with the same force to the person. The force exerted by the person is the action force, and the force exerted by the wall is the reaction force. You might be asking, if there is equal and opposite reaction force to every force being done on an object, doesn't it cancel out each other? However, the action and reaction force does not cancel each other because they act on another object. Just like in this case, action force is a force exerted on the ball to make it lift upwards, while the reaction force is exerted on the hands with the same force as action force. Momentum is a characteristic of a moving object and can be found by multiplying the object's mass and velocity. The law of conservation of momentum states that the total momentum of objects that interact does not change in the absence of outside forces. These three kinds of collision or interaction between two objects are said to be happening in the perfect world. First is collision of two moving objects in the same direction, collision of one moving object and one still object, and collision of two connected objects. No matter what, in all these three cases, the total momentum is conserved or kept the same.
Rockets lift off using Newton's third law of motion. As they lift off, the gases that rocket expels downward causes equal and opposite reaction force on the rocket to lift up. Gravity pulls satellite downwards, but how does that not fall? It doesn't fall onto the Earth because when the gravity pulls it downwards, just like projectile motion, it moves forward while falling, which causes satellite to keep flying, following the Earth's curved surface. Satellites continuously fall toward Earth, but because Earth is curved, they travel around it. Satellite is any object that orbits another object in space. Satellite moves due to centripetal force, which prohibits them from flying out to outer space and keep the circular orbit around another object.